Hey guys, it's Mountain Walk, and today we're going to be talking a little bit about the pre-modern ban list. Yep, that's right. We're going to be looking at the pre-modern ban list and analyzing it, figuring out what stuff's there, what stuff needs to go on, what can be taken off, all that good stuff. And mostly just giving a card-by-card analysis of why it's on there, like historical context of why those cards were banned in previous formats, all that good stuff. Yeah, should be pretty interesting. So we're definitely gonna be doing some big thinking, some almond activating, if you will. I hope you guys got your coffee too, because you're gonna need some big brain stuff today. Now, unfortunately, I hate to tell you guys, but dummies aren't allowed to actually watch this video. So if you're a dummy and you disagree with me, which is pretty much everyone, then wait, no, that wouldn't work. Then no one would be watching this video. Okay, maybe some dummies are allowed. The rest of you other dummies, I'm using the honor system, you can't watch the video. Um, okay, now that they're gone, they turned off video, excellent. So we're going to be talking about big brain stuff. Now typically, people have all sorts of opinions about things. Most Magic players have dumb opinions about Magic in general, honestly. But, you know, that's okay. No big deal. No big deal. That's what I'm here. I'm here to correct the record, as it may be. So we're going to be talking about the pre-modern ban list. And primarily, what is the ban list for? The ban list in this format, as it functions in basically every other format, sans maybe something like Vintage, is to limit combo decks, typically, um, because combo decks often seek to exploit holes in the metagame or axes of interaction that you can attack the format by. So say something like the Dark Depths combo and something like Legacy, very difficult to interact with typical anti-combo tools like, say, Discard or Counter Magic or any of that kind of stuff. Even stuff like Blood Moon, just to the rules nature of how these cards work, actually can backfire on you, and you can actually just lose to like an Abrupt Decay on your Blood Moon because when you play the depths under the moon, it won't have any counters. So it's kind of wonky. So that would be a good example of a deck that would be, say, like a modern where Dark Depths is banned, would be one that you would have to act on. Because I mean, really, like the only cards that can interact with it very well, something like Wasteland, that's not available in modern. So it makes sense why that would be banned. And that's a good example of a combo deck that certainly is just too difficult to interact with profitably, or requires cards that are too narrow or too weird to really do much with. Um, like, oh yeah, you could play, stuff like Ghost Quarter or more things like that, but I mean, those cards aren't really good in decks that aren't like lands, basically. So, but yeah, primarily to limit combo decks, and B, to get rid of weird outlier cards that are just way too powerful. Cards that you look at and be like, how did they print this thing? This thing is dumb. So they're not necessarily combo cards, although they can be. Say, for example, something like Omnath, which is basically just like every piece of text that is good on a Magic card, throw it onto a creature that's well statted. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. Again, Uro, Oko. Older examples would be something like Umezawa's Jite, but especially Skullclamp, probably one of the dumbest cards ever printed. Um, Now there are some exceptions to this rule, of course. In Vintage in 2000, where Fact or Fiction got restricted, that was primarily on the strength of the mono blue control decks. Um, Being able to basically reduce the cost of Fact or Fiction by playing all of this artifact acceleration, so Moxes, Soul Ring, Lotus, etc. So it gets you ahead and lets you refill your hand. Great outlet for all your colorless mana. Or something like, say, Mental Misstep. One of the very rare cases of like reactive answer spells, basically being warping the metagame in ways that aren't good, since oftentimes it just revolves around who has more missteps on like the important one drop. Creates really repetitive game states, pretty obnoxious, and of course, misstep completely shut out all the combo decks, like the storm-based combo decks and stuff. Very brutal, very unfun card to play against. But we're gonna not be looking at any of the anti cards, of course, because the anti is like one of the dumbest mechanics ever. And we will be looking a little bit at the middle school ban list because they have stuff that's banned, but not banned in Premodern. Again, it's not like a one-to-one kind of thing because I don't think there's, I mean, as far as I know, there's not really any middle school tournaments. It seems to be like a very, very localized thing. So I don't know, like, but I mean, there is some relevance to that information because obviously if something was really format warping or really obviously broken, it would have been banned. Probably. I mean, I'm not sure. I just don't see very much information about middle school, but it is similar enough to pre-modern that it is worth at least talking about a little bit. But mostly, we're going to be looking at combo cards today. Pre-modern combo decks are fine-ish. I mean, they're decks. You can play them. I probably wouldn't ever recommend someone play them typically. I mean, they're not bad, but they have so much of a higher fail rate than, say, any of the fair decks, so to speak. Something like Sly or Landstill, Rock, Goblins, like these kind of decks that are just good in general. Any of the tax rack decks, I think, are actually probably even still are just better in general because of access to Enlightened Tutor, so another tutor effect, or Mox Diamond for mana acceleration, or color fixing too. So a lot of the cards that were good, that made these combo decks good in, say, Extended, are banned, like the powerful tutors, or the powerful card draw spells, whether they're card drawing engines or just cantrips in general. Also, the other point is that a lot of the hate, say, unlike in Legacy, where your graveyard hate, you kind of just got to mix it up because some stuff is really good against, like, say, Dredge or Hogak or whatever, and other stuff is, like, not that good or too slow or whatever. So, again, even with, like, within the whole class of hate cards, there's varying levels of efficacy, I guess you could say. So that we don't really have that problem. Like, I mean, you just play like Tormod's Crypt, and like this is just very, very difficult for a lot of the graveyard-based combo decks to beat. So at that point, then it's like, okay, so you need all of your combo cards A, B, and C, and then you need another card to answer the hate card. But again, they also can't have anything else, because then you have to deal with that too. And so it starts putting a lot of pressure on you to just have everything line up perfectly, whereas the fail rates for decks like, say, like if you're playing Jackal Pups or something, like, what? I mean, what, you draw like only lands or something for like 5 turns? I mean, that can happen to any deck. But you don't have the stuff of like, oh, I need to have like 1 Jackal Pup and 2.5 Mog Fanatics, and I absolutely need that Fire Blast. And then I also have to draw a Curse Scroll, but I only need the Curse Scroll on turn 6, and if I draw it any earlier, like, you know, like I can't win or whatever, like, it doesn't have those issues, where obviously combo decks do have all of those problems. In addition to all the other problems, like the imperfect mana and mana fixing in this format, so yeah. But unfortunately, there's not much you can do. Trying to make combo decks good without being too good is basically like it's walking a tightrope. Trying to thread the needle, so to speak, is very, very difficult. But yeah, combo decks, they're fine, but I personally wouldn't play one or recommend someone play one if they really wanted to do well or win a tournament or something. Or especially like over, like, say, 8 rounds. Again, your deck's just gonna have more issues. I mean, there's just gonna be higher fail rates, more moving pieces, meaning more ways for it just not to come together. So that's unfortunate, but it is what it is. They're fine. You can play them, but I'm probably not recommending any of them. Yeah. Anyways, let's get with it. Okay. Whew. I'm talking so much. I gotta drink some of this coffee. Very delicious coffee, I must admit. Mmm. This tastes like coffee. All right. So starting off with balance, this is a big one. I mean, this card's ridiculous. This would be one of those sort of outlier cards where like the power level is just completely busted. This is pretty much white's only. Yeah, it should show you how fair white is. This is like the only really broken white card. I mean, what was the other like white card to be banned? Like it was what, Stoneforge Mystic or something? I guess Land Tax. Was that banned and extended off the top of my head? But I guess Land Tax is good, but obviously not broken. Stoneforge is like fine, like it's a fine card, it's a good card, but it's not like, I mean, it's just whatever, just a creature. Balance is like, I mean, it feels like we're talking like 12 out of 10. I'm gonna refrain from any of the like herp derp kind of sort of cliches. I'll do my best to avoid cliches about balance. Oh, it's not haha funny because it's probably one of the most imbalanced cards in the games for the effect that you get, right? Haha, oh, so clever, but actually, it's interesting. I'm just looking at the arch behind the guy, and I'm like, oh, a Roman arch. That's interesting. Okay. Um, anyways, this card is way too good. Obviously, it even has decks that you could just slot it in. Any of the Tax Racks decks, specifically Parfait. The first one has come to mind. I played a Singleton Balance, obviously, when it was, or because it was restricted in Vintage, in the Vintage Parfait list, like a million years ago. And it's just insane. Like it's just the deck is so already readily willing to like everything it wants to do. Balance is like perfectly set up to take advantage of that. I mean, Zero sacking lands to like say get more land tax triggers. Obviously, when you have less lands, is great. Being able to like scroll rack away, like useless lands, get more spells to play more stuff out, and then to balance them away or to hide certain cards to keep on top of your deck, and so you can balance other stuff. I mean, just everything you want to do, it does it. It does the Armageddon thingy, it does the Mind Twist thingy, it does the Wrath of God thingy while just dodging all of your artifacts and enchantments you have in play. This card is insane. If you ever get a chance with it, you should play it if you can build around it because it's totally ridiculous. But yeah, this is obviously never coming off. It's actually kind of funny. I'm like, why did they reprint this in 4th edition? But then they reprinted like Mana Vault up until 5th edition. They reprinted Necro in 5th edition too, so it's like, who knows? I mean, but those cards were like, I mean, back then, at least when they reprinted them, yeah, they're busted, but like, is a little bit different. Anyways, Brainstorm, again, this card's a little too much like Ancestral Recall, which is one of the best cards in the game. So yeah, this does too much. It's obviously way too good with fetch lands. I mean, obviously it'd be a really fun card to play with, and it's not like it makes games horrible. I think the effect of these really powerful cantrips on the gameplay is actually pretty subtle, but it is very format warping because the way it lets you have access to your sideboard cards and more singletons and things like that is just unparalleled. So Brainstorm, obviously way too good. It's a super fun card, so I'm a little bummed I can't play with it, but that's okay. Channel, the thing produces just an obscene amount of mana. Off the top of my head, probably the first thing I would want to do is start jamming like into like a green sort of stacks list with like Elvish Spirit Guide or something, just dumping your entire hand first turn, just going nuts that way. That would be awesome. Yeah, that would be really sweet. But or I guess you could do like some sort of like channel fireball thing, or well, I guess it'd be channel Karavex Torch because Karavex Torch does have the taxing permission, so that's kind of interesting. But I don't know how good that would be. But again, that's not like how much fun is it to lose to channel fireball out of a random like red green deck? Probably not. Even though it is clunky. Probably not going to be unbanned. This card is obviously just way too good. Producing this much mana is just way too abusable, even without stuff like Belcher or whatever. Okay, so now we have Demonic Consultation. Again, along with Vampiric Tutor and Demonic Tutor, this is one of the best tutors ever printed. I mean, it does too much. It's a great card, but I mean, it doesn't really have the drawbacks, right? Like I can count maybe on one hand the number of times where I've consulted for something and like it lost me the game. Very slim. I've even consulted for like random restricted cards like Yogg's Will and things like that in Vintage, and it's like, I mean, where it's like, okay, I really need this to win the game, and it's like even then, it's really bit me in the butt. So this thing is just, again, too much, too good, does way too much just for any deck, and it would also just end up being ubiquitous too. Earthcraft. This one's not banned in middle school, which is interesting. I've always felt that like this could end up being too good in like the Enchantress decks, obviously because Earthcraft does stuff even with just Argothian Enchantress, not even counting the fact that it's an enchantment, and of course its obvious synergy with Squirrel Nest being the big offender. I feel like that might be oppressive because the Enchantress decks can already do so much. They have the prison board control stuff. They have a ton of mana ramp. They have tutors. They have like stuff like Sterling Grove to protect them, replenish to return all their stuff, and having like an actual combo kill that they don't even have to splash for seems like it could be a bit too much, a bit too oppressive. So that would always give me pause. So I would recommend keeping it on. Like, so this is one of those cards where it's like it would be useful to test against like a gauntlet of stuff and see how it works. But I would err on the side of caution. Same thing with Entomb. I don't believe Entomb is banned in middle school, but making these reanimator decks, which are again they're fragile, but like the problem with unrestricting or unbanning these cards, I should say, is that again, like it's not like a linear thing. It's not just like, oh, I upgraded my shocks to lightning bolts. Like, oh, that's a lot better, but it's not a different deck, right? It doesn't do novel things. Whereas like synergy-based decks or combo decks or whatever, having like something like Entomb is very powerful, giving it an unparalleled level of card selection. And just makes like, for example, just situations where like with Exhume, just like if they crypt you after you with Exhume on the stack, you can actually Entomb and then get a guy into your graveyard at instant speed to really still go off. So it gives you even then some more resiliency against graveyard hate. So I would say Entomb, again, one of those that would be worth testing. But again, I'm always a little weary because it's hard to tell exactly like, oh, is this going to be too good, not good enough? So again, threading the needle, this is the problem. Again, Flash, this is of course pretty sweet with Academy Rector. I guess you can get, I don't know, Form of the Dragon or something. I'm sure there's other stuff. I guess you get Dream Halls, but Dream Halls is just kind of shitty in general, so it's not particularly good. Yeah, I guess, again, this is also another one that sort of strikes me as like, okay, this could be a reanimator card. It's like an instant speed way to put a dude in the graveyard. But also, oh, that big stupid worm thing. It's actually really good with that worm thing from Symbiotic Worm, I believe, from Onslaught, where it's like if it dies, you get the 7/1/1s. So that's actually pretty neat. So that'd be pretty powerful, like turn 2, just like, you know, kind of a one card combo in some respects. Again, and it puts the card in the graveyard for you to reanimate earlier. So like even if you had to like a Verdant Force or something, you could flash it in at end step to put it in, and then you can obviously untap and exhume it or whatever. So I mean, you know, there's could be an option there. Maybe not super busted. I would have to test and see some list. I mean, I guess there's something you could probably do with Academy Rector, but obviously the best thing is to get like Bargain or Banned. Now we have Force of Will. This is mostly just to, in a lot of ways, to distinguish this format from Legacy, or I guess even Old Extended somewhat. I guess that's fine. I mean, the blue decks I think are already good enough as is and are pretty powerful. I don't think, I mean, again, typically this is a more complex topic about whether Force of Will is good or bad, and I think I've went into this before, but TLDR, basically Force of Will is almost always doing like the lion's share of good work, right? It's like Lightning Bolt or Swords to Plowshares where it just answers things and this is a good thing, right? TM. But there are cases, and there have been cases, where some of the most absurd decks will actually be able to play Force of Will, like these combo control decks, like Necro Donate or Flash or whatever, which were absurdly way over the line, and a lot of that is because of Force of Will. So it's not super clear cut, so there is some danger of unbanning it. And of course, you just end up making blue too good, whereas right now I'd say everything is pretty, the power level difference between the colors, everything is actually pretty balanced, oddly enough. So, time to drink some more coffee, delicious coffee. Good stuff. Oh, and of course, it's worth mentioning, yeah, middle school, it's unbanned, but they do have ritual ban, but necropotence also unbanned. So again, Force can be seen as a check against Necro. So that's interesting. Okay, now we got another easy one, Goblin Recruiter. Goblins is already like one of the better decks in the format. I don't think like being able to play Food Chain Goblins is a reasonable thing. It's obviously way over the line. Like it was just too good when it had even the Food Chain Goblin decks that got Recruiter banned and extended. They didn't have access to Lackey because that was banned a couple months earlier in 2003, like in July, to already limit the power of like the Goblin's shell. And this was before Food Chain. The Food Chain tech had been discovered by the Japanese or some guy from Israel. Bunch of people at the same time, who knows? Anyways, so yeah, having like Lackey and Recruiter, in addition to just everything else, is just like, it's just way too much. It would be pretty absurd. Again, this card is just too good against everything. I mean, you can just be like, just draw like 6 lands and a Recruiter, slam Recruiter down turn 2, just play the rest of your lands and just live off the top of your deck and just stack your deck. It's just, I mean, stack your deck is just like obviously silly text on a card. So I don't think I really have to justify this too much. I don't think we need to like have a better Goblins deck in this format. It is fine as is. Speaking of making certain archetypes better, Grim Monolith. This one is interesting. I think this could be fine. Like I think this one I would look at actually for unbanning, because the archetype that powers up really is the artifact like mud style decks. I mean, obviously there is, say, the Devourer decks, the Tinker Devourer decks, and I think that is a reasonable to be cautious about, to be prudent. But like those decks again tend to have like a lot of problems, and most people aren't even playing like a ton of artifact hate in their board anyways. I mean, they're like people are playing like disenchants and stuff like that and random things, but Grim Monolith itself, while it does offer a lot, makes these decks a lot faster. Say with Monolith and Key, very powerful. I think obviously like you'd see more devoted hates, like say like people playing a random Null Rod and like another disenchant or something, or another Crumble, or more overloads, or whatever, what have you, shatters, that kind of stuff. I mean, there's Meltdown, there's Pulverize, there's Goblin Vandal, there's what Purifies, a white one, there's the other one that's Serenity, that's the one I'm thinking of. Blue, I think, has Rebuild, and Hurkyl's Recall, I think, was in 4th too. So there's lots and lots of different options for hate against these decks that aren't even being played, and they aren't even like doing anything really, because these artifact decks are super can be pretty inconsistent, very opening hand dependent, well, if you just draw poorly, it's like your deck doesn't do anything, and has a hard time beating like good draws. Not to say anything of the fact that you don't really have any good removal outside of something like Keg. You can't play something like Disc because that kills all your own stuff. So that's a big problem. Mana Vault, on the other hand, while it would be nicer to have that one unbanned because it's a lot cheaper than Grim Monolith, obviously this card is just a colorless dark ritual, and I think that is certainly very problematic. Would cause a lot of issues. So if anything, I would say Monolith would be fine to unban, even though it's like Monolith's like $1 billion. But I mean, we already have cards in the format that are worth $1 billion, so that isn't by itself really enough, I don't think. Especially if it isn't actually broken. Again, a little bit of caution would be needed in testing these things, but as is, I think it is certainly one that could reasonably come off. Mana Vault, I would say, pretty much never ever. I mean, it's kind of the difference between Cabal Ritual and Dark Ritual. Jar, nope. Have Tinker, so nope, we don't be needing to recreate the Jar deck, even if it is imperfectly or it's too much. Tinker is only fine because you can't play Jar, or I guess Time Vault, but obviously Time Vault's not in this format. So yeah, obviously the really broken stuff comes in Mirrored and Block, but we don't have that one. So you can't have Tinker with Jar, and Jar is obviously the way more busted one. Like, it's just silly. So no Jar. Yeah, it's actually pretty insane in this format. Mind Twist, I think is probably fine where it's at. It does create some pretty like crappy games. Obviously, just like Rit Twist and like you lose. So I mean, even if it's like not the most broken, even if it doesn't like take over the format, I think it's probably fine just staying where it is. I mean, as much as I'd like to like use Cabal coffers to get big old Mind Twists out, I can already do that with like Mind Sludge and stuff, so it's not a huge problem. It's probably fine where it's at. I haven't thought too much about it, but I don't think it really adds too much there. Mind's Desire, of course, is just a silly card, even without any of the like Tendrils or whatever other Storm payoff cards. I mean, I guess you could still use, say, Brain Freeze or whatever. This is just a silly card, especially when you can play like Petal and Mox Diamond and Lion's Head Diamond and things like that, and also Burning Wish. It's just pretty obscene. Definitely one of the best Storm engines or payoff cards ever, since it's basically uncounterable too. Very silly. Mystical Tutor, again, another tutor that just does too much. Getting any instant or sorcery is just, again, makes combo decks a little too good, I would say. Not much really else to say there. Necro, really fun card, really sweet card. If it was unbanned, it would obviously be like a pillar of any sort of metagame, but we also have Dark Ritual, and so it often would just be coming out on the first turn with no real recourse, and unless you were playing like red, like, you're going to be having a pretty bad time. I mean, there is maybe some sort of argument saying, oh, well, what if we can play for Black Vice, and like Black Vice did a okay job in the past of like sort of keeping Necro down, but I think it's clearly too good. Obviously, it just does too much, and especially if people just want to play like a normal game of fair Magic. Even there, of course, it's just too good at trading like life for resources, and obviously with all the Black Life game like Spinning Darkness, or even something like Drain Life or Corrupt or whatever, it's just be too good to enable. I guess you could even play like Ivory Tower or Zern Orb too. And Show and Tell, this one, again, I don't think is that great. I think, again, the only thing I have with this is like it was used before in decks like Reanimator, where you would sidestep Graveyard Hate by showing in your fatty instead of like reanimating it. So that's a reasonable concern. Like, that could be too good because, again, that means you need more different hate. Is that too much? I don't know. This one's obviously not banned in middle school either. There's not really anything else. I mean, what are you gonna put in like recycle or something? I mean, yeah. I don't think I don't think that's very scary. So yeah, I mean, I guess it's fine as it is. This one would be worth testing, I think, to see whether it even belongs there at all. Outside of like its reanimator applications, I don't think it's a scary card. I mean, we obviously don't have Gristlebrand or anything, so. Okay, Strip Mine again, no, another one that's this card's pretty insane. It was only allowed in Vintage with like Wasteland for a couple months, or was it even a couple months? Was it even like a month? But basically, I've heard stories of people being like playing it's for waste for strip, and it's not fun. This card's pretty dumb, pretty dumb. I mean, it creates more non-games than probably anything else on this list. Without even doing anything tricky, you just you just activate it. Tendrils of Agony, this one feels really weird on here. I think it's just is a relic of when Bargain was unbanned. I mean, I guess you could play eggs or something with this card, and I've seen egg decks with it. Like there is one in, say, middle school. But yeah, I mean, it's just whatever. There's counterplay against that stuff. I mean, the artifact removal, stuff like Null Rod, things like that. I mean, whatever. Like, I guess there is yeah, it just seems really weird that this is still on here. So yeah, I don't know. It's kind of wonky. Time Spiral also. Time Spiral is basically broken with Academy and High Tide, both of which aren't legal or aren't in the format. So Spiral is good when you can produce like a bunch of mana, but if you're just breaking even, it's kind of unspectacular. And to break even and not just like spend a bunch of cards to go into it and just, whatever, you need something like Academy or High Tide. Or, I mean, because being like, oh man, this is broken, 6 lands, I'm going for it. Like, oh, I mean, okay, that's not like worrisome. Like that's slower than what like most combo decks in Standard. It's a lot worse than turn 3 Omnap, that's for sure. Um, Academy, this one, I mean, you can't really have Academy plus cheap artifacts, so key, pedal, diamond, LED, stuff like that. I mean, that's just a recipe for disaster. So yeah, I'm fine with this being banned. Obviously, Vampiric Tutor. Uh, this would be sort of fine if it was like not playable in combo decks, and even if it was playable in combo decks, maybe it doesn't make them too good typically. But obviously, better to be safe than sorry. This also is like, I mean, every deck would just play it, right? It's just kind of one of those ubiquitous sort of things. So I think it's fine if certain cards are ubiquitous, like say Painlands or whatever. Every multicolored deck will basically play Painlands, but that's, I mean, that lets you play multicolored decks, which does open up the format. Having to, like, if you play Swamps, you have to play Vampiric Tutor more or less. Not very interesting, and obviously the power of the card is insane. I think Windfall is far too much like our good friend Wheel of Fortune. So let's keep this guy banned, especially like in a format with Burning Wish and LED. That just seems a little silly. Like it's not a lot of counterplay against that kind of stuff. So yeah, no thanks. And I guess you could even recreate it like pseudo kind of jar style of deck. World Gorger should be in banned. If you know how this card works, you lose your entire board when it's answered. So yeah, this card is kind of silly that it's on here. I mean, it's again, it's just inertia really. I'm not scared of like a dragon deck that loses to what like Hydroblast and Disenchant and Root Maze and Tormod's Crypt and Chain of Vapor and like a million different things. I mean, double Bolt even, or I guess it'd be Bolt plus Blast, I guess works. Yeah, so even that, where it's not even like, oh, he'll never get a Firebolt or a Lightning Bolt and a Fire Blast in his hand. So yeah, it's good, but like the reason like people don't understand is the reason Dragon decks were broken was because they were broken with Bazaar, right? Bazaar was the the problem card, right? This did everything, put the dragon into your graveyard, and then when you're comboing off, it draws you into it draws and discards into like your Laquatus or whatever. So yeah, no, this is just this is just silly. It shouldn't be on here. Bargain is fine on here. This one I never actually got to test before it was banned. But a lot of the lists that I saw were pretty silly, pretty interesting, pretty cool. A lot of interesting deck building stuff, but obviously it's like, even without Tendrils, it's like well, I guess you go for the Brain Freeze kill, or you can use the Tricks combo or whatever with it. And of course, last and certainly not least, Yawgmoth's Will. This is definitely one of those cards that just saw play everywhere. Obviously, it has a storied history as a combo enabler, but again, even in Napster, you know, from like 2000, where it was just like, oh, this is just my win card and my random aggro control kind of thing. So this card has seen play in aggro decks, control decks, combo decks, all over the place, because it just gives you a million cards. Ooh, excuse me, sorry about that. It just gives you a million cards, and yeah. So there's not really much else to say about Yawgmoth's Will. That one obviously should stay where it is. All right, so that's pretty much it. There's really nothing to say, at least like regarding, oh, what needs to go on the list. Nothing really. Like, everything is fine. I mean, there are some like maybe unfun cards, but it's not a big deal. Most of these cards are all pretty reasonable. There's no real outliers. The power level and the difference between like the best decks and the worst decks isn't that high. But everything's pretty good. Everything's pretty good. All the decks are pretty fun and interactive. And there's a real cost for playing multiple colors, which is pretty great. So it makes deck building more interesting. Nothing really stands out to me as really causing a lot of feel bads for the most part. For the most part, I think there's 1 or 2 cards, but other than that, so yeah, that's pretty much it. Format's pretty good. Ban list is pretty good, minus, like I said, a couple cards. Combo decks are okay-ish or whatever. Like, the combo decks in the format are fine, but they suffer from too many problems for me to really want to play them. And I don't think there's really a ton of cards you could even unban to make them good. Like, I mean, you could probably make some sort of like combo control, like World Gorger Dragon thing with like Compulsion or whatever. Like, I like came up with a list and sort of played with it a little bit, but deck is pretty dirty and slow, and like it's not even clear whether it's better than well, anything really. It just seems like another deck to play, and it's just the combo itself is so unreliable and so easy to disrupt. It's like it's not fun. It's not fun losing your entire board. You know, so. Yeah, but a lot of stuff, again, there could be interesting things, like Grim Monolith could be a good one, or, I mean, I guess Time Spiral could come off, but like it takes a lot of work to make that work. I'm not really worried about any shenanigans with like Dream Halls, like that's just, I mean, that's just silly, right? Like I need to get my 5-mana card into play so I can get my 6-mana card, and then like, okay, dude, like, I mean, you know, hopefully no one has a Disenchant or something. Oh no, or a Redomil Blast, or, come on, dude. Like, this stuff is just like magical Christmas land thinking. It's not going to happen. It's silly. So I'm glad you guys stuck with me for this long, or maybe just fast forward to the end of the video. That's pretty sweet too. But that's it. That's it. So that's our sort of pseudo in-depth analysis look at the pre-modern ban list. Definitely real genius level takes here, of course. That's all I ever do. So anyway, so thanks for stopping by, guys. I hope you had a good time. Hope you have a nice day.